Ask the Coach 13 with Nick Sellers. How you doing, Nick?
Very well, thank you, Andrew. It's been a busy week, but a good week.
Excellent. Nick, I was thinking back, our relationship started beginning of last year when I was specifically searching for a coach who'd walk the walk in a senior business role and someone who could offer me direct, actionable insights. So after a lot of research, that's what led me to you. Um, so this week I want to discuss coaching. I think it's something that's highly promoted these days and probably quite variable in terms of quality. But certainly had a great experience with yourself, Nick, and really enjoy working with you. So I'm curious to find out what led you on the path to becoming a coach in the first place.
Um, that is a very good question. It's a very challenging question, and it's going to might take me a minute or so to explain. So, I worked for a large corporation, had a great job, travelled the world, and probably about 20 years ago, my boss, who by his own admission didn't have a coaching style, um, wanted to give me help. And so I was sent on a leadership development course, which was brilliant. And as a part of that, I was appointed an executive coach to work with for a few months. When that was over, my boss agreed that I could continue to work with that coach and that the company paid for it. And it affected me a lot. It helped me an awful lot. And as a result of that, the way I think about business, the way I think about a lot of things in life started to change. And I found myself actually adopting more of a kind of a coaching and mentoring style with people that I worked with in the business and with the clients we worked with. And I remember that we were working with a lot of very big companies, blue chip clients. And so as I was working on projects and getting into conversations with people, I started to, I guess, become more kind of coaching in my style in terms of how I was getting people to think about things. Anyway, that covered the next 15 or 17 years. And then I had an opportunity to do this professionally. And that's how I kind of come to a crossroads, and I decided that I would get the appropriate coaching qualifications to augment the experience that I had. And here we are today.
Fantastic. Well, I think you've made the right choice, Nick.
Thank
It's
you.
been great working with you. I've certainly had a lot of value. But your view, why should professionals engage with a coach?
Being a leader is a lonely experience. If you're heading up your own company or if you're a senior person in a company, um, it can be a kind of a lonely experience. And yes, you do have, other members of the team. If you're on a leadership team, there's other people there, but everybody's got their own objectives. Everybody's got their own goals. And I think having a coach is a helpful way of um, testing how you're approaching things. Because the beauty of a coach is that the coach isn't there with you in the workplace. And so can be that kind of interested observer, that person that's engaged but not necessarily involved. And I would kind of dial this back to um, a tennis player, Novak Djokovic, greatest male tennis player of all time, some would argue. Um, Now Novak Djokovic has a coach. Now he's so good. He's got the skills, the fitness, all of the rest of the attributes needed to win. But he has a coach, and the coach never appears on court with him. The coach does not play tennis next to him. The coach doesn't hold his hand there. When he's on the court, he's by himself. And I think there is a lot of value in having somebody who is alongside you, who can get to know you well, who can test and probe how you're thinking. And, I don't know whether you know this, but the origins of modern business coaching lie with a man called Timothy Galway, who was actually he was a tennis coach, I believe, and he wrote a book called The Inner Game. And The Inner Game really kind of explores what goes on in the head of somebody who's a leading sports person, because that's where games are actually won and lost. And you can see that sometimes in tennis with the kind of tenacity somebody needs to have to come back from a set down and go on to win the game, win the match. So, you know, modern business coaching is not really about teaching somebody new tips, techniques, and that kind of thing. It's not about giving people knowledge. It's actually about changing the way that we think.
When you first start working with somebody as their coach, and I can appreciate it's a journey, not a destination, but what's the outcome that you hope to be able to provide to that person?
What we're trying to do, or what I'm trying to do, I shouldn't really speak on behalf of the whole coaching community, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to understand how that person is thinking and then to work with them on ways of actually expanding that, changing that. So very often we have values that we hold personally, but those values don't align with the job that we're in, the company that we work for. And so that causes conflict for us. Other times there are beliefs that we hold. I can't do that. I've never succeeded. And actually, very often when we sort of challenge those things, they're actually things that have never really been fully tried or where we were put off the first time we attempted it and didn't use the failure really as feedback to go and actually make a second attempt. So I would say that when we're working together, it's kind of like developing the trust that you need, the confidence that you need in each other, but then starting to help explore other areas that are going to actually start to take things forward in the direction that the client wants to go.
Yeah. Most weeks, Nick, or at least once or twice a week, I'll receive approaches on LinkedIn from coaches looking to offer their services, which I completely understand. And coaching, like recruitment, is largely unregulated. And I
Yeah.
think that the lack of oversight in the industry can potentially, like recruitment, lead to a negative perception of the industry as a whole. What are your thoughts on the current state of the coaching industry?
I think that's a fair reflection. What you say is unregulated, although I know that there are moves afoot for it to become a regulated industry. There are several organisations like the Association for Coaching, Association for Business Mentors, the International Coaching Federation, the European Mentoring and Coaching. I can't remember what the last letter is. These guys are very good at making sure that people are suitably qualified. So I would say, yeah, we are in an unregulated industry. That doesn't mean to say that everybody in the industry is a cowboy. There are some very, very savvy coaches out there, decades of experience. And, given everything that I've been saying about the value of a coach, I think I would say to anybody that's considering having a coach, keep considering, but do go check whether or not the person that you're looking at is either accredited or a member of. Um, check out what qualifications they've got. For me, I could have called myself a coach just when I finished working for the corporation and set my own website up and all of that. I actually went away and took 16 months to achieve an ILM level 7 diploma in executive coaching and mentoring. And that was because I wanted to know that I had thought it through and been suitably measured. And I was given this ILM qualification, which is very valuable to me. So so I would say there's lots of ways that you can avoid getting caught up with coaches that are not suitably qualified and who may not be right for you. Another thing as well is that any coach that you talk to about working together, it's as much the role of the coach as it is your role to actually determine whether you can work together.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, Nick, when I decided that I was looking for a coach, I do know coaches and I get approached regularly, and I didn't feel they were quite right for what I was looking for. And I suppose my checklist, and
Right.
it's probably the wrong way to go about this, is I wanted someone with good lived experience who had a career that I could respect, and also importantly was someone who's quite pragmatic in their approach. Hope you don't mind me saying that, Nick. I didn't want too much fluff or too much the right word, holistic style coaching. I wanted quite
Yeah.
pragmatic, actionable coaching and advice from someone that I respected, and that's one of the reasons I reached out to you. Obviously, it may not be the right way to seek a coach. What's your advice to people who are considering engaging with a coach? How should they go about finding them? And then once they engage with that coach on an initial basis, what kind of questions should they be asking to ensure it's the right relationship?
A great point. Um, Word of mouth actually is a really positive way in which somebody who's looking for a coach can actually engage with a coach. So first of all, go and ask your friends, your colleagues, people that you trust, who they know as a coach. What do they think of them? What's their experience been with them? If you work for a company that's got an HR or an L&D department, go ask there. If you feel comfortable in your relationship with your line manager, go ask. So ask around people that you already know and see what they know, and they will point you in a direction. They may say, I don't know anybody, but I know of somebody who's had a good experience. So you can always use that as a starting point. You can go online and you can do, searches on LinkedIn, you can do searches in Google. Um, I would just say, if you're going to go search for yourself, then do start to apply some of those kind of checks that anybody should do when purchasing anything. Is the person qualified? Is the person regulated? Sorry, regulated, not the right word. Is the person qualified? Is the person accredited? Do they have good testimonials that they can share with me? Does what they say about themselves um, hold true? I don't know whether you remember back to our first conversation, but we spoke together for a little while, and there was no charge for that. It wasn't like the first time you contacted me, I said, right, this is going to cost you this much to actually have the next conversation. What we did is we talked together for a little while so that you could make your mind up as to whether it was appropriate to continue. And so, and the other thing about any coach is that um, the client always remains in control. The coach is not the person that determines the direction that the client is going to go. The coach is the one who's there alongside, helping to kind of unlock that client's potential by addressing some of those areas of internal conflict, or where beliefs might be holding them back. And coaches, a good coach will have a number of different methods available to actually probe and tease things out and actually start to push things in the direction, but the direction is the direction chosen by the client.
Yeah, sounds good, Nick. And that's certainly my experience. I think something that maybe puts people off engaging with a coach is the potential cost.
Yeah.
I know that some businesses, certainly for their senior execs, will cover the cost of coaching, which I think's great. In my instance, being a business owner, it was going to come directly out of my business expenses, and cost was a consideration. But I think certainly, like a lot of people I speak to, having gone through coaching, you see a very positive return of investment. But what, from your point of view, Nick, what are the tangible and intangible return of investment that you think makes coaching a worthwhile expenditure?
Um, I think you're right that when you just look at the actual number, and whether a coach is charging you £200 an hour, £300 an hour, whether putting you on a retainer for £500 a month, £1,000 a month, it's a number, and it's what you're going to get in return for that, because coaching can be a very transformational experience. And I think it's that we look at. Sometimes we might think nothing of spending £10,000 on a Kenyan holiday, and we're looking to have the rest and the relaxation and the adventure and the excitement of going somewhere that we've never been before. Well, a coach can actually kind of take you on a similar journey into a direction that you want to go and do better. And so, whether you're looking to advance in your career, whether you're looking to overcome something which has held you back for several years, whether it's something like, understanding just how big the goals can be that you can achieve in the course of a year. If it was cheap and readily available, everybody'd be doing it.
Mhm.
But the fact is that actually working with a coach, it requires experience on the coach's part. It requires a lot of dedication. an intellectual investment on the coach's part to actually make it work. And it is transformational for people. And hopefully that's been the experience you've had work as you've talked with other people who've had a coach, that they've said it was transformational. That was my experience 20 years ago.
Absolutely. Do you think there's any professionals out there that don't need a coach and wouldn't benefit from one?
Um, coaching is probably not an absolute place. Coaching is a spectrum. I think there'll be some people who would benefit from just touching base with somebody from time to time. Others might well need a period of intensive coaching for a while to move them forward. I would say that a coach is always going to be of benefit. You'd expect me to say that because I'm a coach, but um, yeah, I think there's always going to be a value. It's just a question of just how much value,
Mm-hmm.
and life isn't a straight line. Sometimes there are ups and downs, and it may well be that there are certain points on that journey when we need a coach more. And it's not just when things are looking bleak. It might be that we're actually on our way up, and that could be a good time for us to actually engage with a coach to make sure that we don't have the down experience that follows an up, that actually we just keep going up and up and up. On the other hand, when we are down in a trough and things look a bit bleak, maybe that's a good time to engage a coach, because then the conversation can be around exploring options for climbing out of that and so forth. So I would say that there is value. Sorry, I'm rambling a bit this morning, Andrew, but I would say that there is value, but it may well be that the value varies depending on where you are
Mm-hmm.
and what you want to do next.
Yeah, I think in an area of your career that you probably think you don't need a coach, and I think it's quite overlooked, Nick, is early on in your career, maybe your first job, and I appreciate that's potentially the time in your career where you're earning the least money. And you do sometimes get, managers, friends, family who I suppose offer the role of a coach. But I think the great thing about a coach is they're not necessarily an agenda to
Yeah.
their advice and the way that they engage with you. Whereas if you've got a manager at work, in all likelihood, their advice and support is geared towards that your role in that organisation. If it's a friend or a partner or a family, that advice is geared towards your role in that relationship. Whereas with a coach, that's quite removed. And I think people often think earlier in their career you maybe don't need that. Um, I think ambitious people earlier in their career that have real intent to get to a goal or a destination should look at engaging with the coach, and it shouldn't just be exclusive of business owners, business leaders, C-level executives. It should be inclusive of people earlier in their career, and they gain a lot of benefit from it.
I
What's
think
your thoughts on that, Nick?
in terms of having a coach, a couple of things come to mind. One is I was involved in a conversation earlier this week where actually um, a lot of bigger companies take on graduates, and those graduates, as you say, they're at the beginning of their career, but actually those are actually the leaders of the future, and that would be a good time for the company to invest in their graduates. So I would say, to anybody that's listening to this conversation, that actually, if you have graduates, it might be a good idea to invest in making a coach available to them. Now, whether that is somebody in the business who has a coaching style, or whether that is somebody who's external, who the company has employed, engaged as a coach to be available, it's an investment, because you've just taken somebody on who's young, full of energy, full of hope, and there's a great opportunity to harness that and develop it. And maybe they'll become the leader of the future 5 or 10 years quicker than they would have done otherwise. And for anybody that is at the beginning of their career and that kind of investment from the company isn't available, find somebody that is, has a coaching style that's in your network, somebody that you maybe a tutor from university, a lecturer from university. It might be somebody that was the inspiration for you getting into the role that you're in, that you can actually just tap into and engage with. Coaching is a two-way conversation. That doesn't mean to say it's necessarily a dialogue that goes only in both directions like that. The coach is really there for the client. And as people progress in their careers, then the nature of that coaching need might change. Even senior people who acquire knowledge through completing a course, a diploma, an MBA, actually then need help in applying that. So whether at the beginning of career or later on, having qualified, we might say, having acquired more knowledge, more expertise, how to apply that and how to get the best out of it can actually be a really good way and that a coach can help with.
Yeah, I think you'd mentioned it could be someone in the organisation. My view, Nick, and I've actually been approached about someone who worked in another department from me who offered to coach me at a previous organisation, and I declined it, partly because I think it's quite important with a coach that you go in with a clean slate, and there's not
Right.
an existing relationship there, that you can be fully kind of transparent, you can be open with them, you don't feel you're being judged. I think that's really important. And I do think having someone internally in the organisation, although they can be beneficial, I feel that you can't probably have a truly transparent relationship with them because fear of judgment or fear of impact on your position within that organisation. So my view is it really needs to be someone external to get full value from it.
And I embrace that as well. The fact is, I was thinking about, I was working for a company that had 60,000 employees. So to find somebody that was not directly attached to me um, was something that could be done in such a large group as that. I think when you're working for a company that employs 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 people even, that might be more difficult. And so to have somebody that's independent and external, I agree with you. I think it makes sense. And even in a 60,000 employee company, it may be that you still choose to go external because you're getting an external perspective on things.
Yeah. Yeah, in my instance, the company was about 250 staff, and I just felt it was a bit too close to home, and we had a kind of relationship where work crossed over, and I liked the person. I just didn't feel it was the right person to engage as a coach.
I think the point you raise is important, though, Andrew. It still comes back to the point that actually it's all about the client. So it's not about the person being coached fitting in with what's available. At the end of the day, coaching is all about the person being coached being able to follow the direction that they feel right with, but with the benefit of having had a coach working with them. And it may be that what they embark on is not what they end up doing. We quite often go down a route based on preferences, what we've already thought about and stuff like that, and then change direction once we find out more. And that's the most important thing, that actually it's the client that gets the most out of it and goes in the direction that they ultimately choose in the manner that they choose and achieves the outcome that they choose as well.
Yeah, one area I think that often gets confused, and certainly I took me a while to get clarity around it, is the difference between the role of a coach and the role of a mentor. Could you explain the difference in a bit more detail, Nick?
Yeah, absolutely. So a mentor is typically somebody that you work with in the workplace. Let's say it's in the workplace because that's the area I'm most familiar. Mentor is somebody that you work with who's, let's say, they're older, they're more experienced, they're better established in the role, and it tends to be that they've got experience of a role or a function in the business. So if I go back 15 years, my role was marketing, head of marketing and strategy. So I would have been an ideal mentor for somebody that was new into the business in a marketing role, even somebody coming in with lots of experience about marketing, but who was new to the business. I would be able to mentor them, help them get settled in quickly, explain to them some of the perspectives around why we did or didn't do things. I could introduce them to my internal network in the business. You get somebody up to speed. So a mentor is somebody that kind of shares the benefit of their contacts and their experience. A coach, on the other hand, doesn't need to have experience of the client's business. Since I started coaching, I've worked with people that are in areas like not-for-profit, healthcare, hospitality. These were industries that I had virtually no exposure to before I started coaching. So as a coach, the important thing for me, I suppose, is that I am non-judgmental. I am able to build a relationship, establish a relationship with the client, which is based on a fair degree of trust, because there's a lot of sensitive stuff that we talk about. And I'm able to help that client to probe their own thinking and to understand better how they think now and how they might think alternatively, and then to be able to map out a path towards the future. So as a coach, I don't need to bring experience of the client's business at all.
Just last question I had for you, Nick. I know you've been very busy and your own journey as a coach over the past few years. And what's your plans for the future? I know you've got a podcast in the pipeline, which is great to hear. I know you've got a video series that you're working on. What else have you got in the pipeline?
I don't know, more of the same, Andrew. I don't plan to retire, okay? I love working and I love the work that I do now. So there are no immediate plans to retire, even though I'm not that far away from kind of having that option available. I don't plan to. I just love work. In terms of where things are going to go, I believe that there is a lot of power in the area of team coaching. So this is actually working with teams of leaders. Because let's face it, at the top of a company or even in senior positions where you've got a group of people that are called a team, they very often have individual objectives. And so, the person that's head of IT, their objectives will probably be centered around making sure that the technology works as expected and so forth. The person that's head of sales is all about bringing new business into the business. Their objectives don't actually often meet together. And so getting a team together that actually all pulls in the same direction is, for me, an area of coaching I'm very excited about.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't normally ask this, Nick, but as it's completely your bag, coaching, if somebody's listening to this and they want to reach out to you for an exploratory call or drop you an email, how's best to get in touch with you?
The easiest way is to find me on LinkedIn. The shortened version of you find Nick Sellers for sure, but if you look for Nick Sellers coach, that will pretty certainly find me. And there's a link there that you can actually book a discovery call there. You can go and have a look at my calendar and choose a time and day that's suitable for you.
Excellent. Yep, I'd highly recommend. Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks again for your time, Nick. Been a great conversation, and I've actually learned a lot about coaching that I didn't previously know. So every day is a skill day, and hopefully you'll join me again next week.
Absolutely, Andrew. I always enjoy talking about, well, the topics that we've talked about over the weeks. So engaging, so necessary for us to take a long, hard look at things and actually just figure out what the right way forward for us is. And that, I think, is what coaching's all about.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Nick.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.